Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Imperfect Men's Club podcast. My name is Mark Aylward, and I'm here as always with my good friend, colleague, and co-host Jim Gurule. And yeah, once again, Jim brought some lived experience to the topic conversation, and once again, we remain kind of dedicated to our litany of self hyphen phrases. And I'll let Jim tie that back into the flywheel that we develop with the five areas of life. But I think we started with this notion of self-subjugation, which is basically just appeasing other people to avoid conflict, but I can expand on that. And then the other side of that, if you're not self-subjugating, then you're standing up for yourself, which brings in the other two words that we were tossing around in the pregame, which are self-integrity and self-dignity. And the interesting opposition of those two things, but more importantly, more interestingly from my perspective, Jim, was how it was pretty easy to see when subjugating yourself so that you avoid confrontation might be a polite thing to do, but it also might be, sacrificing your dignity in the wrong place. And I think we talked about a couple of things that came up, encounters you had with people, and I'd love to hear. I think you shared one of them with me, but I think you have another couple of them. So I don't think self-subjugation is necessarily always wrong, but I do think personally that helping someone else and helping yourself maintain your self-integrity and self-dignity is pretty much always something you want to consider, particularly letting someone else maintain his dignity during perhaps a disagreement. So what do you think? What are your thoughts on that, Jim?
Well, we'll start off like we do every week with a strong pregame and our framework of the Imperfect Men's Club. Uh, the imperfection is the perfection. So when I get frustrated at interactions with others, I try to remember what we talk about every week. And for those of you not familiar with our framework, on a very high level, we call it the wheel of life, the flywheel. In the center of that is the number one self, which is self awareness. And that vocabulary is expanded to many, many selves. But today I learned a new one. So I'll let you read the definition of that this morning. I never even heard this word, but we'll come back to that in a second. But what I find throughout the week, I refer to the framework of these five areas of life, whether it's a interaction through my professional work, or it's in relationship to the mental health and physical health, which is one of our spokes, our relationship with the world, our relationship interactions with others, men and women, our relationship with money. Those are our framework that we use every week. But this week was interesting because I had typical interactions, but some really good experiences and some really frustrating experiences that may be um, to go deep into self-awareness. So, Mark, why don't we start off with the definition of today's topic, and then I'll get more into the specifics of how they played out.
Well, self-subrogation, there's a pretty long definition. I'm going to kind of shorten it a little bit, get the point across. The act of voluntarily subordinating your own needs, desires, judgment, or values to those of another person, group, or external authority. And unlike forced compliance, where you yield because of a threat of some kind, self-subrogation is a choice, is an internal choice. And when you were talking about that circumstance, it was really someone committing to an appointment and then not showing up and seemingly not concerned about the impact that might have on your entire day.
Yeah, well, this particular one we had a call scheduled actually a week in advance. It was a request. They asked me to be on the call, so we scheduled the call for 9:30. It was a Zoom call. I sent the invite out, and I go there, and they're not there. So I get I call, say, hey, mate, what's going on? Maybe something's wrong. Well, turns out their dog got sick and they were up all night. And as a result, they, I guess, fell asleep and then didn't wake up and missed the call. And so I have to ask myself now, and by the way, it's not the first time this has happened with this particular person. This is a business relationship. And that's where I said, don't be frustrated, be fascinated. That's my one of the things I used to say to my kids. And it's true. Don't be frustrated, be fascinated. How could
Mhm.
this happen again? And then I started to ask myself, am I tolerating this because I'm trying not to um, cause unnecessary conflict, or is this at the core of my integrity now, or my even my dignity that I'm accepting to interact with people like this in general? There's also another one, which kind of I have another one I want to share with you. It was somebody we met at an event, and I almost looked like it was a form email, and it said in a lot of detail, I work 7 days a week. Saturdays I golf. I'm hyper focused on golf, and then went on to talk about I'm intentional with my time and energy, and and then their schedule. And I thought, wow, that was a lot of information. But then after a day or two, I said, I actually really valued that. They were being very transparent about who they are, what they do, and their availability. And even though it came off a bit odd, I started to that's somebody with integrity, right? They're going to, from the very beginning, they're going to tell you exactly who they are, what they do, what their schedule is. And then that way, you could decide whether you want to interact with them. It was a bit odd, but I also had the extreme, right? Somebody that doesn't communicate anything,
Yep.
and then doesn't respect my time or even their time to the extreme.
Well, it's a very interesting thing because as we talked about in the pregame, I can see, not in every circumstance, but I can see both sides of this. Do I want to stand up for whatever this is? And in your example, let's call it punctuality, right? Like
Yeah,
punctuality is a sign of respect.
yeah.
Punctuality is a sign of professionalism.
Punctuality. Punctuality is being on time. How about just completely not showing up and telling somebody? That's
Yeah,
that's different than punctuality.
it is.
Very
It is.
different.
It's
Yeah.
worse.
Yeah, it's much worse. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's the same concept, right? It's like,
Yes.
do I want to invest my time given these circumstances or just move on?
Hmm.
And I think what we talked about in the pregame was, well, what are those conditions? And I brought one example up, like I'm at the Thanksgiving dinner table with
Hmm.
family and somebody wants to talk about politics. I'm probably not going to take that bait because my decision making would be, are we really going to accomplish anything other than ruining this meal for everyone at the table? And is this the time to do that? So I'm not appeasing anybody.
Yeah.
I'm not, dropping my values. I'm making a conscious decision to make the environment that I'm in as interesting and positive and helpful as possible. And I'm deciding not that I don't feel opposed to that position. I just don't think this is the time to talk about it,
Yeah.
you know?
But today I want to focus on this is a company. As you know, I'm here in San Francisco, so I'm pretty involved in the AI startup scene and that.
Mhm.
So I met this company, one of the founders at an AI event last year, actually end of last year, I think. So and I love the concept of what they were doing with a combination of a well-trained staff in the Philippines with AI, along with some brilliant framework, and then content and social media management, all these things. So we met, which is always nice. The value or the importance of a live meeting. They wanted to meet. We could have done it on Zoom. They asked if I would meet personally. I said sure, no problem. Because we weren't that far away from each other. So we met, had a nice meeting. It was the three of us. Um, and then I said, yeah, I'd like to move forward. So they sent me a proposal last week. We had a call last week, and they had sent me a proposal outlining it. We went over it. I said, yeah, it looks good. Let's get started. Um, so I get an email on Sunday night, or it must have been Monday night, and it's he's very apologetic, and he says, "Jim, I'm so sorry to let you know this. We don't have the staff. We had to let some people go, and we can't fulfill this contract. No money was exchanged,
Mhm.
and but he had the integrity to let me know in advance that they could not fulfill the obligations or the proposal that we discussed.
Mhm.
And I was so impressed one that he did that because most people won't do it. What they'll do is they'll take the money and they'll try to figure it out.
Mhm.
Um, so. that this is what I want to focus on, not the negative people, but how much I value somebody. And I can only think of that as that's integrity, right? He had the integrity to tell me the truth before we got started, before he took the money. And you know what it did, Mark? It made me want to work with him more. It
Of
made
course.
me
Yeah.
so there was an opportunity. I'd say, especially online, 9 out of 10 people just take the money and then
Well, I'll tell you, Jim, it's interesting that you bring that up because I spent my career, much of my career, competing against the big six, big four, big eight consulting firms like the Arthur
mhm,
Andersons
yeah,
and the Price Waterhouses, and they've merged so many times I don't know what the names are anymore, but they would go out and purposely land huge projects they had no capability of
mm,
supporting with people,
that's
and
just
then they would turn around and go recruit those people from companies like mine.
yeah.
And it wasn't just tolerated, it was just encouraged.
Well,
And that
yeah. This is
whole
very timely.
racket.
So that's why. I mean, I went from one extreme to the next, right?
Mhm.
In the same basically day because then he said because we were doing the kickoff call yesterday, and he said if you'd like we could still have a conversation tomorrow as scheduled. Meaning he didn't even run from the onboarding call.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I remember saying, most people probably say no, we don't need to anymore. And I said no, we'll do it. Let's have a 15-minute call. That was also integrity. He didn't just abandon the project. He said we had an appointment scheduled for tomorrow at 11 o'clock. I'll still do it, even though you know the situation.
Yeah, to me, and I'm not like pretending to be all altruistic and this awesome guy that always does the right thing by by no means. But during particularly the times that you figure out who someone is are not when things are going well. You
Yeah,
figure out who
that's a
someone
good
is when
point.
things are challenging.
Mhm.
and and people like this guy stand straight up, face the music, take the
Yeah,
responsibility, apologize, even though some of this is probably
yeah,
beyond his control. He took
yeah. Which, by
responsibility
the way,
for it
I want to
anyway.
be clear too. It wasn't just him. There was two partners. They were the co-founders. So
Both of them.
it
Yeah.
was she was just as much a part of this as well as far as integrity and doing the right thing. So I
Yeah.
want to point
I
that
had
out.
a guy, he's still a friend. He's in New York. He was a senior executive of a financial services company in Orlando. And I had helped him outside of the normal human resources boundaries find a couple of really good programmers. And he's a sarcastic prick like me, so we got along from the get-go. And I said, you're like one of 15 guys in this company I want to be doing business with. Can you make some introductions? He said, come on over tomorrow afternoon. We have a staff meeting. And I walked into the room and he turns to the 12 executives there that are worth millions of dollars to me potentially. And he goes, I want to introduce Mark Aylward, the only honest recruiter I've ever worked with.
Oh wow, what an
Mark, the room
endorsement,
is
huh?
yours. And I'm like,
Yeah.
wow.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, it goes to show you that there's some things will never go away. I think if we do business, people do business with people. We talked about AI before.
Yeah.
This is going to become more important than ever before. But coming back to the selves, as I do in every episode, I'm interested in the vocabulary or the conversation I'm having with myself. Right, I want to get the right words to describe what I'm thinking. This is part of the whole self awareness that we talk about every week in our framework.
Mhm.
So why don't we start off? I sent those to you. So let's talk about um, self integrity and self dignity in terms of what they are and how we can apply those to everything we do in
Yeah.
life. Because
Yeah.
ultimately, it does come down to how we want to interact with the world and the systems that we intentionally or unintentionally set up. Uh, it's our operating system.
Well, it's a fairly common phrase or thought that, your reputation is everything. Your
Mhm.
reputation is all you have. So this is worthwhile. It's worth
Yeah.
time, it's worth money, it's worth attention. So
Mhm.
this definition is in the context of self-subrogation. So in contrast, so self-integrity and self-dignity move us from a defensive posture, avoiding the trap of subjugation, into an active architectural one. It's about building a bulletproof internal operating system.
Mhm.
And when you anchor these two concepts together, you establish an unbreakable feedback loop. Self-integrity is the alignment of your actions with your core values, and self-dignity is the enforcement of those values in the world.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
couple
interesting.
words I want to point out there, but we talk about or used to more often, but when I'll get back to it, and that's alignment. It is
Hmm.
about self alignment and being clear on what it is that you value and what's important to you, and not giving up these other things to appease somebody, or what I often refer to as to be nice versus being kind.
Yeah.
What I shared with you before, those are two people, relatively new relationships, right? I don't have a history with them. The other ones I do have a history with, and that's the difference between being kind versus nice. The other two were nice, that said they were going to be on this call. They were nice and they were apologetic, but they're not very kind, and their integrity is very low, and that's we judge people based on what they do, not what they say. And so, something my dad used to always say: "You'll be judged on what you do, not what you say."
Yeah, no, that's the thing I used with my kids when they were coming to me saying, I don't know who to trust. I mean, the whole world, it feels that way now. I don't know
It
who to
does.
trust, you know, and
It,
that's how you
it is
do it.
so
That's the
true.
simplest formula in my experience is exactly what you're saying. When the
Mhm.
words and the actions are the same, you'll typically find integrity. And when the words and the actions are different, you find hypocrisy
Mhm.
and a lack of integrity. And that's been
Yeah,
my life experience, you know.
yeah, yeah. All right, so I listed what, four items, three or four items. Let's break these down and see how we can apply those to our everyday life and our system.
Yeah, let me I got them. So, thinking of self integrity and self dignity as the engine and the armor of your personal sovereignty, they rely on each other to function. The first of your four talking points is self integrity, is the commitments you make keep to yourself when no one else is watching. I
Mm,
think that's an important part when no one else is watching.
mhm,
It is strict accounting. It's a strict accounting system for your own behavior, ensuring that your external actions perfectly mirror your internal truth.
mhm,
I don't think that's a science that anybody can perfect, but I think that you can strive toward that condition
mhm,
because perfection is a pretty big ask. But yeah, when I'm walking around doing things and saying things that are aligned perfectly with how I value things, I'm happier. I'm more content. I'm more productive. It's a really clear space to be in. And I think I speak for everybody, when I'm doing things that aren't necessarily aligned with my values, those shame, guilt, anger, fear, anxiety things are always creeping in. So it
mhm.
is to some extent for me self-policing.
Yeah. Well, the word integrity gets overused or used wrong often. The word integrity is, my definition at least, is what you do when nobody's looking, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you could say a drug dealer has integrity if it's not moral. A good drug dealer, um, delivers the drugs consistently. That's in, hey, I'll have an ounce of weed or whatever it is to you tomorrow at 3 o'clock, and it's
Yeah,
there.
he
That's integrity.
fulfilled the order. It's funny.
Yeah. So, but I do think often the word integrity and morality get combined as one. They're not. Integrity is you do
No,
what you say you're going to do.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's an important distinction. I remember telling my dad about when I was working in the restaurant business years ago, this Colombian busboy, Louis. He was a coke dealer, and he was a very pleasant little guy. And I was telling my dad about him one day, and he goes, he's a good guy." He goes, "No, he's not a good guy. He might be a nice guy, but he's not
Mm,
a good guy."
interesting.
So kind of a
Why?
similar
Why?
distinction
Why did your dad know he wasn't not a good guy?
because he was selling cocaine.
Well, you just made my point. Yeah, that's a moral. This maybe we're off topic a little bit, but exactly my point. Just because he's selling cocaine, maybe one believes that that's not a moral thing to do. I would agree, but he can still have integrity of that.
Yeah, yeah.
There's
It's
he could still be a good guy, by the way. Actually, just not a moral man in the view of somebody else. If he's selling a illegal drug and he's hurting people, that's probably not a very good person. But I think thank you for making my point. That's the difference between being a moral person versus a person with integrity. It's
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation. I think as I was walking back from the break before we started recording, I was thinking about this notion of me, and I think it's good for all of us. Is like you use the word self-subrogation and said you'd never really heard that word before, and I said I'm pretty sure I know what it means, but I think I would in either case say to you, well, let's define what that word means because I'm sure, like every word, particularly a complex one with nuance to it, other people are going to have slightly different impressions of what that means. So
Mhm.
let's not let the conversation begin until we find out. It doesn't really matter if what we determine to be the meaning is even true. What matters is, do we both feel the same way about the definition?
No
You know?
question. That's back to self-awareness. And
Yeah.
and you've heard me say this before. The most important conversation you'll ever have is the conversation with yourself.
Yeah.
And that conversation is a vocabulary um, that we assemble in our minds, and often we don't even know the true meanings of some of the words that we use.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
that's what I appreciate about our work.
So
So anyway, what's the next one?
number two, the protocol for external execution regarding self-dignity. If self-integrity is your internal blueprint, self-dignity is how you build and defend the structure out in the world, the visible manifestation of your self-worth, signaling to others the exact terms upon which you operate. That speaks specifically to your encounter, your negative encounter. Am I going to tolerate this behavior? If I choose to tolerate it, can I try and reestablish the rules? Should I dismiss her entirely? And if I do that, what are the consequences of all those choices? And
Yeah.
I would suggest most people don't do that level of critical thought regard before they respond. But and maybe you're still trying to figure out what your decision is in terms of your next action. I don't know.
Well, what yeah, I'm laughing because, what is dignity?
Yeah.
It's like you were saying, you have to be clear on what that means. I do think dignity is something that you give people dignity, you respect them, but I
Mm-hmm.
also back to self dignity. You have to give yourself that too. You have to have a standard that you're not willing to lower, or that's a bad choice of words. You have to have a belief system that you feel strongly about, and regardless of what other people think or how they treat you, you have to stay true to that. And it doesn't mean that you can't adjust that as time goes on, but I think dignity is something that we don't talk enough about in the
No, it's a good topic. And I think to your point, I think I keep thinking about politicians. They got them on tape 5 years ago saying one thing and they're spouting the exact opposite today.
yeah
In order to move your position and remain with your own self-dignity, there has to be a circumstantial trail. There has to be new information. There has to be something needs to have changed that you were unaware of perhaps before, and now you're factoring it into your position. But if you're just flopping back and forth, there's no integrity there. You
yeah
know,
yeah
you have to have
yeah
circumstances.
yeah. And to your point, Mark, about definitions, I just threw it in there in the chat because I think it's worth talking about, probably better than the other ones that we had on or other topics for today. But yeah, read dignity. I think it's something that it's
Yeah, and then I want to go back to number three because it speaks specifically to one of your examples.
okay.
So, dignity is the fundamental inherent worth and value that every person possesses simply by being human. It is an inalienable right, distinct from respect, which must be earned. Dignity encompasses both an internal sense of self-worth and the right to be treated fairly and respectfully by others.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. I find that if I um, approach every interaction with the intention to give somebody dignity, I think it's one of the greatest things. It's the greatest skill if you could do it. It's again, you don't say it, you just think it, and you've talked about this before. It's the person that's taking your order at the coffee shop. Give them dignity. Just intentionally have a good thought about them. Appreciate what they're doing, um, and then you get it back too. They give it back.
Yeah,
But this is
one of the most impactful things that I've ever done, maybe I'm sure you have as well, is to fire people, that aren't working out.
Mhm.
And I think that I always went out of my way to maintain their dignity in that moment because that's a really tough moment for people. It's the hardest thing I've ever done other than file for divorce
Mhm.
is fire somebody. It sucks.
Mhm.
But I never criticized them. My approach was always, look, the
Yeah.
way I do things is the way I do things, and there are a lot of other ways to do things.
Yeah.
The way that you look at the world and the way that I do things don't seem to match up. So I think we'd
Mhm.
both be better off pursuing whatever it is we're going to do next in separate areas. So it's not a bad thing. It's just, do we recognize this and save both of ourselves time and
Mhm.
frustration, or do we just kind of pretend and keep moving forward? I think we
Mhm.
should break free. But I always, however the words came out, it was always like, "You sucked. You got to get out of here." I never did any of that, and
That's
I
great.
know people that did and
Yeah.
do.
So here's a question. When it comes to dignity, let's just say the interactions that I had last week, right? Somebody missing a call or said they're going to call and didn't call. Um, that is it dignity because I accept that and continue to accept that or keep that relationship? Sometimes you can't completely eliminate the relationship. So is that a somebody or is it that they didn't give you dignity um, and you've accepted it? It works
Well,
on both ends, right?
I think I think you would concur, although I hate putting words in your mouth, that that there's a level of at some point you're condoning the behavior,
Yes,
right?
right.
At some
By
point
by
you're
by by
encouraging
maintaining the relationship.
by just letting her get away with whatever she got away with. What
Yeah,
you could find areas where, I don't care about your dog. I don't care about your sleep. Those are
right,
your calendar's your calendar, and it's
right,
not a difficult thing as for an adult to
right,
look at a calendar before deciding to take a nap to make
right.
sure you don't miss a fucking meeting.
Yeah.
But you could also just let it slide because you got better things to think about. You got to get on with your life. There's
See,
no, I don't know what the circumstances are.
this
So
this that's what we're talking about today. See, I think it comes to a point where if you accept that, then you are lowering your own. Um, I think it's an integrity. It's a personal thing. It's
it
not
is.
them. It's not at all about them. It's about how we process it. It's self-awareness that are we going to accept this and continue this to
Yeah. Are you
accept that
going
that
to
that
take control of what happens next? Or are you just going to,
yeah
subjugate that control over to her or
yeah
anybody else?
and
It's a
then
great,
allow them to do it again and again and again. And I think
and they will, because people say what you will, whether they're good or bad, people are consistent, you know?
they are. This is really what we're talking about. Again, it's not just one person. There's certain people that I allow to do this, and
There's a lot of talk on LinkedIn about toxic culture and toxic bosses and
yeah,
people
interesting.
complaining about their circumstances, but they're not doing anything about it. And I'm like, if you let a
Well,
toxic boss treat you poorly a second time,
that's right.
now it's your fault.
It is. This is yeah, Mark. That's what I want to talk about today. Right? That I believe that comes back to your self integrity
Hmm.
and your self dignity. That is not their problem. That's yours.
It's
It's
it's the playground again, Jim. It's like somebody pushes you and you just walk away.
yeah.
Tomorrow they're gonna push you over, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah. I
so
don't want to. I don't want to sound like one of those, old guys. It was, nostalgia used to be better. It just seems like there's more assholes out there than was before. I don't know. And when I say by assholes, because that's what this to me that is. It's a form of being an asshole. I think it's just become so normal to blow things
we've
off and
normalized
that
a lot of bad behavior,
yeah
and
and
shame on us for doing that. I think there's some people that are trying to fix that in terms of accountability and stuff. But
yeah.
ultimately, Jim, as we talk about all the time, self-awareness wise, this stuff is I'm either grabbing onto this and controlling what I can,
Mhm.
or I'm going to invite the world to take advantage of me. And
Yeah,
there's some place in between those two things that's probably the right place to be. But
yeah,
I think being conscious of it, wanting to talk about it, wanting to investigate it, that's how we end up handling these things a little better, which is
yeah.
just going to give us back some of our energy and time.
No question, no question.
So
You say you had one more. You want to wrap it up?
well, the number three is we got like 3 minutes on the
Okay.
clock. Willingness to walk, and that's walk away.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
That's just what we talked about,
Yeah.
right?
Go ahead. Yeah.
It's the ultimate measure. It's what your two people who determined they couldn't support your work coming to the table saying, "We can't do this, Jim, because of this." That is a willingness to walk away from probably a substantial check that they didn't take from you because they couldn't fulfill that obligation. That's
Yeah.
integrity, like
It
we
is
talked about.
willingness to walk away. The
Yeah.
ultimate message of self dignity
Yeah.
is to walk away.
Yeah, walking away from a bad contract, walking
Yeah.
away from a bad relationship. I walked away
Yep.
from my marriage. It was the hardest thing I've ever done,
Yep.
but it definitely supported my integrity.
Yep.
And the last one, just because we're pressed for time, the sovereign mindset.
Hmm.
True
Hmm.
dignity means you no longer outsource your validation to external results or approval. Your
Yep.
certainty comes entirely from the fact that your internal system is clean, your actions are aligned, and your boundaries are intact. Yeah, that's a great one to.
Yeah, that's why I came up with these. Like I said, this is my exercise, but this is also back to what I said in the beginning. The most important conversation you'll ever have is the conversation with yourself, and
Mhm.
it's not what happens to you; it's how you respond to what happens to you.
Totally.
The other one that comes back to showing up. Remember, I've often said 90% of life is showing up.
Yep.
Some people just can't show up.
Yeah,
They
it's
just can't show
really.
up, and that's the common thread to those type of people. They just can't show up.
Yeah, yeah, you gotta walk into hard conversations and difficult rooms. You just have to, and you
Mhm.
can walk past them, but I see that way too often in corporate America. People in leadership are stamping down the people below them, or the people below them are unwilling or scared to speak up about things they feel strongly about. And
Mhm.
just it creates that environment. But I like to take the position, and I'll close with this. If I have the ability to control the circumstances, I'm going to exercise that ability. I'm not going to look to
Mhm.
blame somebody else. Because if you
Yeah.
stay in these relationships too long, at some point it's shame on you, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, my final words would be back to like you said, whether it's leadership, just modeling is the best teacher. It's how you if you act a certain way, if you then other people, especially if you're in a position of leadership, will accept that as being okay. And then back to again, 90% of life is showing up. It's not just showing up; it's showing up all the time.
Hmm.
It's showing up prepared.
Hmm.
It's showing up on time and it's showing up with a good attitude. That's how you become part of the 90%. And then the other stuff just kind of falls into place. Very few people can show up. They, for some reason, come up with all these excuses and then they wonder why things don't work out. It's really
Yeah.
not that complicated.
It's very simple. It's
It's
not
very
easy, but
simple.
it's very
Yeah.
simple. Yeah.
Yeah.
All
So,
right, man.
all right.
Thanks,
Till
dude.
next week.
See ya.